All right. We're going to be looking at a kitchen island here today for this new project. We have 6451 Reed Smith. If you want to go ahead and sync that folder, go ahead and do that now. You can pause the video. What I will do here, I'm going to start looking at the drafting schedule for that item, and then going into skimming through the drawings for that item as well. So that's kind of my goal here for this video, getting back into it here. So as you can see, this is F2 for project 6451 Reed Smith. We do have an ARC reference here. And a little bit later this afternoon, I do have a meeting scheduled to go over this project with our project management team, Patrick and Greg. So we'll have a little bit more information this afternoon, which is why we're not going to get too far into it yet today, but we're going to go and take a look at it to see what we can dig up on this. So first things first, let's go ahead and pull up that ARC graph and see what we're dealing with here. So I already do have that folder synced to my machine. So we're going to go into drawings, architecturals, and first things first, we are on level 11. So I'm going to pull up the level 11 floor plan here. And then we're going to locate F2 on that floor plan. Once we have that, then we can go to our ARC graph and start digging into what exactly this island is going to be. All right, so I've already kind of looked at this. I already know it's right here in this work cafe. But you can see all the labels are placed on the floor plan here, so you can see what's going on. You can see right here, no elevation views are being called out for the island, but we do have an enlarged plan view being called out here, represented by this bubble around the work cafe. So you can either open that file in your file explorer, or you can click on the link to it, and it should take you right to it. So now that I'm looking at this page, you got an enlarged view of the work island or work cafe. And it looks like there is yet another enlarged plan view off of this that goes to the island page itself. So we're going to open that up. And I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen because fortunately for us, all of the views for the island are on this one sheet. So what we're going to do is take a look at what we're dealing with here. So first, right off the bat, you can tell they provided a nice axonometric view of the island, sometimes referred to as an isometric view as well in the mechanical drafting field. But this is our axonometric view showing the front of the island. They didn't provide one of the back of the island with the cabinets, but that's okay. We're going to be making our own at a later time when we start to model and plot this island here. So moving forward, I always kind of like to start in the same direction as what we do when we plot our drawing. So starting with the axonometric view, moving to the plan view, then to the elevations, then to the sections, then to the details. So looking at this plan view here, don't pay any mind to that little, that's our estimating team trying to get the square footage of the stone top. So what we've got here is we've got a plan view, kind of an oddball shaped island, kind of goofy looking, but hey, that's kind of neat though. You can also see that there are 4 elevation views provided for the island, which is great. We love to see that whenever we can get elevation views of each side of the item that we're drawing. That's great. In addition to that, you can see there are very strict dimensions that are set in place for the island that we're going to be matching when we go to model this later. And on top of that too, you can see there's these little dashed lines that show through the countertop, and that is to represent the framework underneath the island. It's kind of hard to see what's happening until we go to model it. It might not really click right away, but what you're seeing there is the outline of, there's a leg here coming back. This area here is all going to be framing. I would say this area here from this stretch over to here is all framing as well. And then you got another leg, which you do see in the axonometric view. If you come back here, you can see that. There's that leg right there. And then there's a little curved die wall that sits below that curved table, and that's this pill-shaped die wall here. So you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. You got a leg, die wall in the middle, a little die wall framed goofy shape here, and a little pill-shaped die wall right there too. Underneath here is where your cabinets are going to live. That's where we're going to go into next. Is going to be our elevation view, so you can see what is going on below that countertop. So view number 2 here, that's looking this way, northward on the plant view at the side of the island here. Doesn't really show you a whole lot, but you can kind of see the leg beyond right here. That's this guy right here sticking out. You have your PL1 paneling on the side of your island. That's going to be on this surface here. And then you have a toe cake below, also made out of PL1, it looks like. Any notes here? No, nothing out of the ordinary. We also have a finish for the top that is called out as SS1. So as we finish up looking at the drawing, we're going to look at the materials for the project and see what SS1 is as well. So moving down the list, so now we're looking at view number 3, which is the front of the island, the one that you can see in their axonometric view up here. So we're looking at view 3, front of the island again. You can see the leg, 2.5 inch thick legs that come down the sides. There's something new that we have not explored yet. This is a foot rail. Foot rails are used primarily on bars, but sometimes you'll see them on kitchen islands and other pieces of furniture too. I have seen them on banquettes as well. I'm sure I'm probably seen them on other things too, but primarily you really only see those on bars. So as we get through this will be a good learning example because we're going to be working on bars in the near future coming up. So yeah, foot rails, really usually what it is a metal tube that runs from left to right. Sometimes it follows the profile of the bar or the counter there, but this one is just a straight run of a foot rail. And then you can see in between there are 3 brackets that they're using. We may even need to add a 4th one, but they're showing 3 right now. These brackets are there to anchor the foot rail to the floor and possibly to the panel and the die wall on the island there too. When we get to the section views, we'll confirm where it's being anchored at, but usually it's only 1 or 2 of those items. Usually it'll either be at the floor or it'll be into the die wall, or maybe both. You can see here you have your solid surface top, which actually stops here. It doesn't waterfall down, which is kind of unusual. Oh, actually, you know what? Maybe that's not true. Maybe it does waterfall down and it's just not shown very well, because here it does clearly say that this is solid surface 1 right here. So really, what we're seeing then in that case is that instead of this being all green, really this should be yellow right here, representing that that will in fact be solid surface as well. That comes down to here. Yeah, I mean that's really what that's going to look like there. So yeah, there'll be a small waterfall edge coming down, so that solid surface does come down the side here. Most likely it'll be mitered too, and I don't know if I can do that right now. I'm going to go back and flip-flop what I just did. But most likely though, this will end up being a mitered face here coming down, just for the aesthetic of it. So you'll see that come down to here. Won't be as dramatic of a knife edge point, but it'll look more like that. So you'll see that coming down. That's a waterfall edge right there. And you can see that here in the next view that we're going to move over to, which is going to be looking at this side of the island with a little pill-shaped die wall. So looking at that side, got your solid surface top, waterfall, solid surface, then your lower solid surface counter there. Then you have your PL1 and your PL1 base trim. As you can see too, they did make note that between the panel and the base trim, there is going to be a 1/4 by 1/4 reveal. That will most likely just be a kerf through the base trim. So when you draw that in, really what that's going to look like is something similar to, similar to this. Your base trim will look like that. You'll have your scribe at the bottom of that. And then you will also have this little quirk, a quirk or curve cut through the top of it. And that'll just be quarter by quarter, just like it's noted on their drawing. So it'll look like that. I'll leave that there for now, but that's something we're going to be coming back to in a minute. All right, so then moving on to the last elevation view. This is elevation 5, which is looking at the cabinet side or the back side of the island. See, we have, let's see, 5 different cabinets. You have a 4-drawer stack. It does look like the lower drawer is taller than the rest, so we got to make a mental note of that to come back to that. We have a recycle and a trash pullout. We do need to be mindful that we do need to make sure that the trash can and the recycle bin are going to fit within those cabinets too. They do give you a cabinet dimension here. It says 3'11" and a half, approximately. If I took that 3'11" and a half, divided it by 3, that would mean that each cabinet is just shy of 16 inches, which is going to really make it hard to fit a trash can in that cabinet, but we will do our best to see what we can do. If anything else, I know it says equal. We might have to ask about this, but if the can that they want does not fit within these cabinets, then maybe this cabinet here needs to shrink in width for that to work. But we'll ask about that before we just assume that we're going to do that. Something else about this job that you will see throughout is that rather than pointing out the pole on the drawing and making a leader going to it like this, they have a note in the top left corner of each elevation view with poles on it that tells you what the cabinet pole is going to be. So it's something to keep in mind and eye out for, because you will see that from time to time. In this case, it is something that is right, it's here, but you may not notice it unless you're looking for it. So we know what our poles are. We know that our base trim is going to look like that. We know what materials we're looking at, but we're going to go a little deeper into that and see what those materials actually are. And you can see that we do have a couple other things. So let's go back to the cabinets and continue with where we left off. So we have these here, which are not called out, but these here are medallions. So you can find those online. I'll pull up a couple examples here for you so you can see what they look like. So there is 2 companies that we use pretty frequently when it comes to that. One of them is called Arc Hardware, and the other one is called Concept Hardware. I'm pulling up both of those websites here so we can look at those. Okay, here we go. So when it comes to Arc Hardware, they do make a lot of bar products, but they also make these logos here. Theirs are a little bit more on the pricier side, so we're kind of shying away from using them these days. But they do offer a pretty big variety of different logos that you can purchase for your drawing. So like this is the Concept Hardware website, which is pretty much the exact same thing. It's a little cheaper, but they both have the same types of products. So if you're looking for something like a trash logo, you can find it on either one of these websites here. Let's see. Most likely we're going to be using the one on this website. And most likely too, you're going to want to match the finish of your pole to the finish of your medallion too, because you can buy these in all different finishes, but ultimately you want it to match. So looking back at our drawing, you can see, if I zoom out a little bit, that this is an Amarok pole. It is an edge pole, meaning that it's just like a little tab pole that sits on top of the drawer. and it is something that they want in champagne bronze finish. If I was to look up that Amarok pole, let me do that real quick. Amarok champagne bronze edge pole. It looks like, it's loading real quick, but it does look like this. So it's more of a bronze, brassy colored pole. If I'm looking at their websites, um, there is a champagne brass finish on Concept Hardware. It's pretty close. It's got some grain to it where I don't know if their pole really does, but it's going to be the same finish though. Same thing with Arc Hardware. They don't necessarily have a champagne bronze, but they do have a satin bronze, which is very close. But being that there is such a steep price difference between the two, we're probably going to end up going with this Concept Hardware one because it's a lot more affordable for practically the same exact product. So we're going to end up buying that off of there more likely. Okay, moving down the list, let's keep looking at these cabinets. We're going left to right here. So the last one that we have here is a microwave cabinet with one pull-out drawer below. You can see they do give you the equipment number. It's E2. So when we do our research later and digging up the finishes for the job, we're also going to look up what E2 is as well and see what that microwave looks like. Before we go there, I want to take a look at the section views through this island and just see what it is that they have here. So just like we did with our cabinets, we're starting on the left. So let's start with this 4-drawer cabinet and pull up view 6 on this page. View 6 is right here. So you can see there are 4 drawers. We got 3 6-inch tall drawers here, 1/4-inch gap at the top, 1/8-inch gap between each other one, which does correlate with on-site standard anyway. That's what we do too. And the bottom drawer is going to be whatever is left. So if it's 10 inches, it's 10 inches. If it's 11, it's 11. It's whatever is left after you take the 6-inch drawers out of that number from here to there. There's also a little side note saying inside of cabinets are going to be white melamine. So we do know that too. I have to make a mental note of that too. You can see the foot rail here. This is kind of what it looks like. So it's a bracket. There's your tube in the middle, and your bracket connects to the floor, and it connects to the wall of our island here. There is an outlet, which does not, as far as I know, I don't think it's pointed out in the elevation view, but there is an outlet there. So one thing we can look at too is if we have electrical drawings, we can narrow down where the outlets go and how many outlets there are going to be on this island. One thing that is not shown in this section view here is that there is an overhang. So most likely you're going to need an in-wall bracket to support that overhang. I realize we do have legs on the front of here, but we're spanning a distance that's 7'4". So it'd be a good idea to include an in-wall bracket or a couple of in-wall brackets here to support this cantilever, because otherwise, if somebody puts a lot of weight on this, there's going to be, this could have some flex to it, potentially even crack that solid surface if it's brittle or anything like that. So really, in order to support this appropriately, what we need to do is we need to throw in some in-wall brackets, and we'll probably do the A&M C flat brackets for this. We can route those in to the subtop. Since we are building the die wall, we'll know exactly where those brackets go, but they'll fit somewhere like this. So you'll have that bracket sitting in there. It'll screw into the ribs on your die wall, and we can route it into the subtop here to hide that bracket arm so you cannot see it from the front, like from this elevation view. It would actually be hidden behind the solid surface, so they would be, like the arm would be up here. All right, so we probably need like 3 of them, would be my guess, to support that. But we will be adding those in too, so it's a really good idea to keep in mind. Anytime you see a cantilever, it's probably a good idea to question it to make sure, do we have enough support? If not, what do we do? We usually throw in one of those in-wall brackets, or they do make island-specific brackets too, which you can buy. And what they do is they just have a flat piece of steel that runs across the top of that framing. And it works essentially the same as the in-wall bracket, except instead of bolting into the stud, you're bolting into the top of your die wall like that. I'll probably just use the in-wall bracket like we normally do. It's going to be pretty standard for us. Let me go back to where we had that drawn into, so I'll leave those notes on here. All right, moving on. So we have the trash can cabinet section, view number 7. So what they're showing is pretty in tune with what we normally provide. Aside from the fact that they have 2 trash cans in here, it's going to be a little hard to do that, but we will see what we can do. We'll get into that later once we start modeling and reviewing this. Aside from the double can, really there's nothing that's overly different here about what we normally do. It's going to be an upside down drawer box essentially. We have to remember that when we do that, we're going to use those button fix type 2 hardwares here to attach the lid or the top of that drawer box. They're going to sit right there. They're of course not going to draw them in because that is an on-site standard, not like an industry standard or architectural standard. That's just something that we do. So we're going to remember we need to add those in later. It's also not shown, but there should be a front and a back to this drawer box too. That's just nitpicking though. So really, other than that, again, same deal. We have an in-wall bracket that we need to show. That's going to go up here. Foot rail, I already have it spec'd for you. It's Harbor 55 in the system, but it's the exact same brand and finish and model number is what's here. All right, so then that just leaves the microwave cabinet. The microwave cabinet really is one of the more complicated out of the 3 that we have here. Before we move on to, I'm going to also add that medallion there too so we don't forget it. Okay, so the microwave cabinet, these get to be more complicated because you are integrating equipment into the cabinet, specifically equipment by somebody else. So really, when the shop builds this, they're not going to have that equipment there in the shop to make sure that it fits. So that's where our job and the listing team's job is really important, because we want to make sure that we're drawing something that makes sense and that we're actually able to build. So after we review the section view, we're going to go looking for E2 to see what E2 is. So, but first, let's review the section view and see what we've got going on. So same notes as before, in-wall brackets at the front of that die wall. That's going to be really important. Here, they're showing what appears to be, which isn't accurate. They have hinges on here, but this is going to be a drawer, it looks like, from the front view. We probably should question that because that's kind of weird. I'm guessing it's supposed to be a drawer though, and that's just a mistake. Probably a recycled section view from another job, I'm going to say. Because clearly that's what they have there is a drawer. So I'll ask about that in the meeting here shortly and then see what we got for that. The front of this does not change. There's nothing new about that that we need to worry about. What we do need to worry about though is that we have probably a drawer in here. So we're going to drop one of those in. We also need to keep an eye on some things here. So microwave cabinets typically will have electrical built into them. So you can see there's an outlet built into the back of that cabinet right there. We do need to make sure that we show that on the drawing so that way the install team knows that there will be a outlet there. The outlet will be cut out in the field though, so it's not something the shop is going to do on their own. we'll most likely have the electrician and the installer for the cabinet out there working together to locate where that outlet goes and how big the route needs to be for the outlet to sit in. One thing that we're going to look at too once we get to the microwave spec is that more times than not these days with microwaves, what we'll do is we'll build a cabinet and it's going to have a false front on it, meaning that it's going to look like there's a drawer there or a door there. But even so, it's really not going to be a door or drawer. What it's going to be is a panel that sits there, and that panel is going to be attached through the use of button fixes, just like we do for the trash cabinet. So we'll throw those button fixes in there, and that holds that panel on. Now, you might be wondering, well, that kind of defeats the purpose. Now you can't put the microwave there. But the microwave actually gets cut out in the field, just like the outlet does. So they'll route out the rectangle for the front of that microwave in the field. So that way the microwave can have a frame around it, and it'll be cut directly to the size of the equipment so that there's no mistakes being cut in the shop or anything like that. It'll be perfect to what the equipment needs. That is most likely how we're going to handle this. Once we look at the equipment, we'll know for sure. Sometimes they actually do just want a microwave that sits on a shelf with nothing around it, and that's perfectly fine too. But how to know if you need a panel on the front of here is if you see a microwave that includes a trim kit. Trim kits are just a fancy term for like if your microwave has a frame around it, that frame is going to be attached to this panel if it has one. If it doesn't have a trim kit, then potentially the microwave might just sit on a shelf and maybe it's just like this and it sits right there. That can happen too, but we're going to take a look at that here and see what we've got. Also, something to note too, just so you do have this here in front of you, is the equipment, or sorry, the poles on these cabinets are not shown correctly. I have seen that in this drawing set already because these are generic section views that are probably taken from another project. You can see that these poles here are what we call as wire poles. Wire poles are just a metal pole that makes a C shape like that. This is a wire pole turned on its side, so you're looking at the side profile rather than the front. And then the other thing that we're seeing here is that in the elevation view, clearly those are tab poles, meaning that they're routed into the top of the cabinet drawer. That is a completely different type of pole. But the reason I know that this is the right way it's going to look is because they give us this pole spec, which, again, looking at the website of Amarok's website, that's a tab pole right there. So that's what we're going to use. So again, don't pay a lot of attention to this pole here because it is not shown correctly. And same with this too. It will not look like that. All right, let's look at the equipment though. So that is labeled as E2. And so in order for us to find out what E2 really is, you're going to look at the architectural folder, and there should be an equipment plan here somewhere in there. It may take a little bit of digging, and you might have to expand that a little bit and see if you can find it. Maybe it'll be under schedules. Yep, there it is right there. I'm going to open this up. Schedules looks like there is not only material schedules and lighting schedules and all that, there's also equipment here too. Now we're looking for E2. E2 is a Frigidaire microwave. So let me pull up my Google over here. We'll go Frigidaire. PMB S30 80BF. Let me pull up the actual website for that microwave real quick, and then we'll look at what we've got. Okay, so This is the microwave that we're using. You can see, oops, ads. You can see that there is a note here that says install trim kit is required, meaning that we will need that panel because we're going to have a trim kit to attach the microwave to the cabinet with. If I look at, oh, here's a really good picture of what that looks like. So if I look at their website, you can see that trim kit's right here. That's that silver box around the microwave, and the microwave is the black, of course, in the middle. That trim kit just frames it out, so you don't see the edges of the microwave or the vents on the side of it or anything like that. See that a lot in commercial architecture, especially these days. So it's not uncommon to see that. But when you do have one, it's really, really important that we do our research on it because we want to make sure that that trim kit is going to fit on the front of that cabinet. It can't overhang and it can't, well, it can't overhang because you have two cabinets right next to each other for one. So you can't have that trim kit sticking over here because it's going to start to overlap the other one. So you cannot have that. So we got to make sure that we're sizing these cabinets appropriately for that trim kit. To find out what that is, a lot of times there's going to be an install guide or a spec sheet for that microwave. Let's see. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Oh, this is probably it here. Okay, that's the trim kit by itself. Got it. Okay, so they give you here the dimensions of the trim kit. It says that it's 30 inches wide and 18 inches tall. So when we look at our drawing, we have to make sure that our cabinet is at least 30 inches wide because it cannot be anything less than that. Luckily, it looks like they've already accounted for that. So as long as there's no obstructions here, that should actually work out fine. So I'm going to check that, saying that we looked at that. The other thing we want to look at too is how much room we have here. Because again, we need 18 inches of space for that trim kit to fit. It looks like they just gave us exactly that. So again, this should be okay. It's also accounting the 1/2 inch at the top and the bottom. So as long as this adds up to be that 18, we should be good to go. So that looks good to me. Then the last thing I wanted to look at with you too, before we really get into drawing anything, is again, we did talk about having outlets on the front of this island here, as well as an outlet in the microwave cabinet. And so when we have outlets, it's always a good idea to see if we have electrical drawings for the job. If we have electrical drawings, it will give us more detail on where those outlets go and how many outlets we're going to be dealing with. So to find that, you're going to go back to your architectural folder. If you do not see any electrical drawings in here, sometimes they will be moved into trade shop drawings or maybe even under original downloads. You might have to look for them, but luckily they are right here for this job. They are labeled with an E at the front instead of an A. Stands for electrical, of course. So what we want to do is find the electrical plan, and we're going to go right to where the island is shown. Okay, so you can see here on this drawing, these symbols that are right here are representing a duplex outlet, meaning it's just 2 outlets per outlet box. So you can see there are 2 of them on the front, and then there's 1 in each microwave cabinet right here. Something also worth noting too is that this outlet is 28 inches off the floor. So when it says 28 next to the outlet, it means that's 28 inches tall to the center of the outlet from the floor. So something to also keep in mind, because we're going to be showing those outlets on our drawing, we need to keep track of that. I'm going to place this over here with our island drawing so that way I have record of it. And I'm going to say I pulled this from E-1.11 based on that. So I'll save that there. As far as that goes, let's just look one more time to see if there's any other special notes about this too. So our slides are already heavy duty slides, so we don't have to worry about that. Yep, that checks out with our cabinets already. We're good there. Countertops, front lip, and backsplash is to be scheduled. Material provided, substrate is required. Oh, right. So speaking of materials, we still have to look at what the materials are for the island. But other than that, we might be okay to start working on this. So there's also a small note here saying they really want this to be a Rubbermaid 2957 trash can. And that is one of our shop standards. So that actually works really well for us. I think that's hardware 51 on our list. So we'll have that on there. Also, a quick note that it looks like they want the hinges to be self-closing 170-degree hinges. During my meeting with Patrick and Greg, I'm going to ask that question because if that's the case, we do need to make sure that our drawings reflect that. Our standard hinge at Onsite is a self-closing 120-degree hinge, but we do have a 170-degree self-closing hinge. We just don't use it as often as we used to. So I'm going to ask them to see if that's really what we're going to be using for this project. All right, so other than that, what's left now is to take a look at what materials we're using, which looks like PL1 and SS1 are the main culprits here. So again, let's go back to our schedules drawing. All right, so PL1. Let me take a look at what that is. It is Wilson Art Ruskin Oak. Okay, which actually happens to be a grained laminate. So we need to make sure that we do show grain directions on our drawing as well. But this is what it looks like. You can see what that pattern looks like there. You can also click on pattern availability and it will tell you what sheet sizes you can buy that in. It looks like you're able to buy that in 4x8s and 5x12s. Okay, so then the other thing we need to look at is SS1, which is a material by MSI. Let's see, MSI Premium Natural Quartz, Calicata Silicio, I think. Don't quote me on that. All right, so this is the material here. Pretty bougie. This is going to be what our countertop is made out of. So it is a veined material. Doesn't necessarily have a grain direction to it per se, but it's something that does have a specific pattern to it. So let's see what if they tell you what size it comes in. If not, I will have to confirm that with Patrick and Greg. It does look like they have, let's see, they have two different slabs, one in 2 centimeter and one in 3. But it doesn't tell you what the overall dimensions of the slab is going to be. So I will have to ask about that before we really get into drawing this. Reason being is that these are going to be, there's going to be a very large countertop. We need to make sure that when we draw this that it actually makes sense. We're able to get that material in the size that we need it to be for this to work, because what we're looking at here is a countertop that is 60 inches by 144 inches wide, or long by 60 inches wide. So it's pretty large. I don't know that we're going to be able to get this in 2 slabs. It may actually have to end up having to be 4. We might have to do something like this and break it in the middle, kind of like this. But I will ask about that during our meeting to see what the game plan is going to be here. Because, again, maybe these do come in 12-foot sheets, but even if they do, you have to worry about how is that going to get into this space. I mean, looking at the floor plan there, it's a pretty big room, but you have to get from, because we're on level 11, we're not exactly on the first floor, so that slab has to come through the service elevator over here and make its way through the building, through these doors, right? Yep, looks like we'd have to go through here, through here, through here, and into this room. So really, you have to go through some pretty narrow doors. So I'm already saying right now we actually need a joint in the middle, regardless of you know, what we're dealing with here for slab sizes, because it has to get through the building. But I'll ask about that during our meeting and find out for sure what the game plan will be. I'm just assuming at this point, most likely there's going to have to be at least 2 joints in this countertop. All right. So just some stuff to keep in mind. Again, this is more upfront research of what we're getting into here. But just so you have that, that's kind of something I would expect to have for our team members, is to start looking at stuff ahead of time, doing some research on the materials that you're working with, and then figuring out before you even start drawing what it is that I'm drawing. So again, when we pick this back up, we're going to start working on some 2-dimensional section views through the island, and then we'll actually go through and model it and then plot it based on that model. But for now, I think I'm going to leave it right where we have it here. And then in the next one, we'll work on more of the nitty-gritty actual drawing in AutoCAD.